They changed the amendments, they've amended the agenda.
We could do a live.
Let's see if the commission...
We are about to start, I might add.
Your face, stop having fun.
I'm not going to help the chairman, so can I tell you?
If I got everyone's attention,
Good luck with that.
welcome to the Grand Traverse County Resource Management and Administration Committee. This is the meeting of October 12th, 2011, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That's where we say play ball. Whose week is it to watch Herb?
I don't know.
And if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Fleece,
Present.
Gilman,
Here.
Henschel,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Limcool,
More or less.
Maxbauer,
Here.
Thomas,
Yep.
Wheelock,
Here.
Richardson.
Here. Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the August 10th minutes, and we did not have a meeting in September.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the August 10th regular minutes of the RMA committee.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, this is our opportunity for first public comment, and if the clerk would read the rules for public comment.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. 1. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. 2. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Okay, and this is our first opportunity for public comment. There's also general public comment at the end of the meeting, and if there is a particular item on the agenda, I will take public comment during the discussion of that agenda item. Is there anyone who would like to offer public comment at this time? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a disclosure and then, if acceptable, make a motion. Under our agenda item, our amended agenda item, under consent calendar item number 7, consent calendar item B, 4 and 5. It's come to our attention that those two grants, because of the timing of them, need to be signed by the chairman before the end of the month. So I would ask if we, before we get into the consent calendar, if whoever makes a motion for the consent calendar would agree to having item B, 4, and 5 have this committee of the whole ratify the grants on item 4 and 5 and allow the chairman to sign those grants for this evening.
Okay, well, when we get to that,
I just want to make a disclosure.
Yeah, why don't we just pull those off the consent calendar and handle them separately?
We can do that.
That'd be the
We can do
best
that
way to
too.
do it. Okay, do I have a motion on the agenda itself?
I make that motion.
Okay.
Support.
Support by Lemkool. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. No special orders of business? Okay, and that brings us to the consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Housing Liaison Report for October. Number 2, Conservation District Staff Reports August and September. Number 3, Road Commission Monthly Report September and October. Number 4, Grand Traverse Commission on Aging Board Member Appointments. B, approve. Number 1, Clean Sweep Grant fiscal year 2012. Number 2, LED Lighting and Energy Efficiency Improvement Grant. Number 3, 2011-2012 Victim Rights Agreement. Number 4, Michigan Drug Court Grant. Number 5, Mental Health Court Continuation Grant.
Okay, is there any member of the public who would like any item removed from the consent calendar for more discussion? Okay, seeing none, is there any member of the board?
Well, given your recommendation, Mr. Chairman, I'll pull off B4 and B5.
B4 and 5, and we'll deal with those as soon as we're done with the
Item
consent
C.
calendar. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, clarification, under B3, the recommendation says approval of the 2011-2012 Victim Right Agreement, but in the summary, it asks if you will sign it and return it at this meeting and ask for ratification, just
that
as
one
the
as
same
well.
as the other two.
Okay, so B3 as well then?
Yes.
Same
Is
issue.
there any other item
So we have
the
that
board would
three.
like to have removed? So we, at this point, we have B3, 4, and 5 removed. Okay. Commissioner
B2,
Fleach?
please.
I'm sorry?
B as in boy, 2.
B2, all right. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar minus B2, 3, 4, and 5?
So moved.
Support.
Okay. I have a motion and support by roll call, please.
Commissioner Gilman,
Yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Enman,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Those days, too.
Thomas,
Someone wants to vote for me.
This is who you are
Milak?
tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
Lees,
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes. Consent calendar passes. Okay, that brings us to items removed from the consent calendar, and we'll start with item B as in boy 2. Commissioner Fleece?
I have a question. This is on page 33 in our packet. And the recommendation to award the bid is to Medler Electric in the amount of $43,483.49. The question I had was, and let me find it here again real quick.
Are you curious why the other Traverse City company
Yeah.
didn't get it? I think I can explain that if you would like.
No. It talks in here about having to, if it's awarded to this other company, having to go to 240 volts or 220 volts. Yeah, right here it is. Cool LED is disqualified for not meeting specifications. Their proposal requires an external transformer or converting our existing system to 240 volts. Both cost prohibitive. The question I have is why would it be cost prohibitive? Normally,
I can answer that.
on a big lighting system like that, or where you're going a long distance, it's cheaper to run it on 240 than it is on 110. I'm assuming it's 110.
It's 440 now.
It's 440.
It's 440 now. The problem is the track is a mile long, and you can't run 240 volts for a mile unless you use wire that's as big as your arm is.
We would have
So
to
we would
pull all
either
the
have,
wire and-
we'd have to
Yeah, no,
replace all of the wire.
if it's
and everything.
440, I
It's
understand.
440, it's currently 440, and you'd have to put individual transformers at each, at each light pole, or at least within a zone of a light pole, or you'd have to replace all of the wire to bigger wire in order to drop down to 220.
I know, but nowhere in this does it say that. So my assumption is they're running on 110.
No, it's 440 now. I had
Well,
that
if it's
discussion with
440, I
I had that
understand.
discussion with Danny too, because when I seen it in the first place, I says, well, Cool LED is right here in town, why can't they do it? And actually, they brought some sample LED lights over and put them in, and almost immediately blew them out, because they didn't realize that it was a 440 system.
That's not.
But-
Yeah, had I not been out of town, I perhaps would have had the chance to call Danny and get an explanation.
That's the situation, is we currently, that whole track system is a 440 volt lighting system, and in order to transform it down to 240s would be just cost prohibitive, and in order to put wire in there big enough to run 240 volt for a mile, because it's one circuit, you'd have to have huge wire.
And the other thing is that 440 is three-phase. 240 is single phase,
Sometimes.
usually.
I would make a motion that we award the contract in the amount of $43,483.49 to Medler Electric as presented in their bid.
I'll support that.
Okay, any further discussion?
There's about 3 of them, so I guess that we like.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to B3.
Okay, I'll take a shot at see if I can get one motion under all three. Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for item 3, 2011-2012 Victims' Rights Agreement. Item number 4, Michigan Drug Court Grant, and item number 5 under approval, Mental Health Court Continuation Grant, and that those those two grants and one agreement be ratified by the Committee of the Whole and allow the chairman of the board to sign the grant applications this evening.
Support.
Any discussion? Commissioner Gilman?
I have a question on the, on page 35 of the Victims' Rights Agreement. Just, could somebody elaborate? Is there anybody here who could speak to what this agreement says? Or, I mean, because all we have is just, do we agree, you know? We're
I
recommending.
could speak to that. Basically, this grant pays for our Victims' Rights Coordinator, Denise Schmuckel.
Okay.
It covers her salary and benefits, basically, as I understand it. And so without this grant, we wouldn't be able to have a Victims' Rights Coordinator, and that's something that's required by statute.
Bob, maybe you could talk just for a second about what the program does, what it provides.
Well, the Victims' Rights Coordinator sends all the statutorily required notices to victims. Notice about whether a case has been charged, whether it's been declined, whether or not the case, whether the defendant has been released on a bond, those types of notices, to keep the victim appraised of what's going on with the case. Also to discuss the case with a victim if they have questions about the legal process, if they have letters or they would like to appear at a sentencing, those types of notices are given to the victim, and Ms. Schmuckel discusses what's expected or the rights that the victim has.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Lundquist?
Yeah, what do we do for a backup if something happens to her? I mean, isn't she the only one that's really certified to be able to do that?
Well, I don't know if there's a special certification that's required. Obviously, she's got years of experience, and
She does a great job with it.
She does do a great job. I know the judges seem to be very pleased with the job that she does, and the prosecutors in our office, we think it's a very valuable service. It frees up a lot of our time that we would be spending talking and counseling victims, which is not our specialty. It's not something we're necessarily good at, but Ms. Schmuckel is an expert at that.
I just wondered if there was ever a thought of a backup for her, because, I mean, that's putting a lot of pressure on one individual.
Most counties only have one victim's
Yeah.
right advocate because of the cost of the program. But I'm sure if Al was here, he would welcome a second victim's
Oh,
right
sure.
advocate if you wanted him to have one.
Yeah, but
Commissioner Maxbauer?
Well, I've personally experienced being a victim, having had my car windows shot out. And Ms. Schmuckel, advised me when the court dates were. I attended as a victim. I attended the court hearing. I spoke during the court hearing, and I think I made a positive difference. And I would not have made that positive difference if it had not been for this position. I wouldn't have known when the court dates were, but I was kept advised, and I strongly encourage us to vote in favor of this.
I appreciate Commissioner Inman putting all these together so we can just get through this. And one question might be for our attorney, Bob Cooney. Should the motion reflect that this is a board action rather than a committee of the whole action, or is it okay as stated?
I think it might help to just clarify that this is the board taking final action on approval of this grant.
My understanding of the previous actions we've taken is the committee of the whole can vote to have the authority to ratify contracts and grants and not have them go to the board meeting at the end of the month. And
Yeah, my point is
So
we're
that-
making a board action right now.
because this is a committee of the whole meeting, this is not an actual county board of commissioners meeting.
It's my opinion
Yes.
that as a committee of the whole, it's really putting form over substance, and that anything that the Board of Commissioners could do at its regular meeting, it could do at this meeting, save for statutory requirements regarding public notice, such as a special public hearing on a topic.
We did this about 2 months ago on one
Yeah.
item, and Bob has reiterated, he believes you could take final action at any of these committee meetings. We have not made that change formally because we thought it was best to have that discussed by the Board Rules Committee when you review the rules this fall. But I think Bob is right, and you can just give final approval to this tonight. Typically, though, what we have done is we have always approved the grants and authorized the chairman to sign contingent on the grants being ratified at the board meeting at the end of the month. That's how we've done it in the past.
Right.
We
But
have to
Bob-
accept the grants even if we get them.
Right, but Bob is saying you can do it right now and just be done with it.
So are you happy with the motion, or do you want to clarify the motion to say that my motion is that the Board of Commissioners at this meeting
Approve and accept.
approve and accept and ratify and allow the chairman to sign the contracts and agreements?
That sounds fine.
All right, now, I'll clarify that motion.
Okay. Who was the second?
Wheelock? Oh, no,
That's fine.
Max Moore, sorry.
Fine.
Okay. All right, everybody clear?
Tiger time's coming.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion
Rain delay.
carries.
And
Do you want to sign those? You can take them with you? Larry, if you want to sign those, Carol will take them with her.
She's pacing in the back of the room.
Carol, did you want to make a comment?
They had
or
a
you just
2-hour
want us-
rain delay
you
before
just
the
want
game
us to
started.
sign
She
it and
has
get out of
paid-
here?
Which is
she
better
just
than in the
needs
middle of the
something
game.
signed, I think.
Okay. Okay, then that brings us to resource recovery, department funding.
Bob Ostott, Resource Recovery Manager. What I've got before you tonight is a request for funding for the Resource Recovery Department. And funding that I'm recommending is to continue with the landfill surcharge at the current rate of $4.45 a ton. I've also included in my presentation here is a breakdown of the different the different sources of revenue for the department. The largest part, of course, is the landfill surcharge, but I'm also using some fund balance next year, about $47,000 of our fund balance to also support the budget.
Yes, Dennis?
So what we're asking you to consider this time, as opposed to putting a sunset on this, on the funding mechanism, you read in the recommendation, until an alternate funding source can be implemented, it would stay at this level. So you would have, at any time, you could change it, but until you changed it, it would stay at this. And that same would go with the funding mechanism. You know, you could change the mechanism or the amount at your discretion, but until you did, it would stay at this.
So theoretically, we wouldn't be doing this a year from now if we haven't made any changes.
You would not be doing this a year from now if you haven't made any changes. That's correct.
Commissioner Maxwell first,
I would move for approval.
Second.
okay, second by, and then Commissioner Lemko?
Yeah, does this meet within the same budget guidelines as what we are about to approve next week
Yes.
as part of the budget hearing?
It's the same as-
Because this really gives an income, it doesn't give an expense.
Well,
what the
he's just trying to
expenses
show
are.
you what this is, but
Yeah.
what this means is that we think, and some maybe would like to use up the fund balance sooner, but what we're trying to do is be able to stretch what fund balance there is to maybe get 5 years out of it or 6 years out of it to help supplement this. I know Commissioner Wheelock probably feels we should use up the fund balance more and reduce this rate down. I'm sure he'll talk about that. But we believe this is, a prudent way to do this. And let me, just for background for new commissioners, the 10 years that I've been here, we've discussed this every single year. Is there a better way to fund this? We've gone over all the alternatives. Seems like every couple of years we go over them. And the bottom line is, we talk about them, but no one has found something that politically will work better than this. And the people, I'll pose to the new commissioners the way I have to the old commissioners. How many people have ever complained to you about this surcharge? I've never had a commissioner, other than the commissioner complaining to himself. I've rarely had a commissioner complain about this surcharge.
I complain to everybody.
My point is it seems to be relatively benign at this point in time. We're in the middle of changing our system, and we just think, every year we talk about it, every year we talk about alternatives, we never come up with anything better. And this is down from $10.
Yeah. It's consumption-based, and I'm all about consumption-based, so I tend to agree that that's probably, at this point, still the best way to fund it. So.
Commissioner Wheelock? You were raising your hand, weren't you?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure we're not going to get out of this without hearing from me a little bit. Couple things. One, Bob, what's the current fund balance of the resource, or the anticipated fund balance?
$321,000 at the start of 2010.
So we have almost 100% fund balance in this account.
What's the budget?
392. I guess my points, obviously, everyone knows I haven't supported a surcharge in 20 years since this county's been adapting one. I believe the surcharge is unfair to our commercial businesses. 65 to 70% of the solid waste in this community is from commercial industrial waste, but by our own information, they are doing 70, 80% recycling. They're doing huge amounts of recycling compared to the residential, but we're penalizing them in surcharge to fund programs that we operate for residential space. We do not offer any commercial recycling programs. So obviously, I will not support the fund balance or the use of surcharge. But that being said, I think it's important to note that we are currently, and as you all know, I've been working with Bob and others, we are currently working on Ordinance 17. One of the things that I think will happen in the rewrite of Ordinance 17 is we look at the licensing and franchise agreements that facilities and companies have to operate solid waste programs in our community. The idea that a waste management company or a disposal company pays a $25 an annual fee for license and authorization to operate in this county, and it doesn't matter if he's picking it up with one pickup truck or whether he's running 25 compactor trucks and a couple transfer stations. He still pays $25. I think there's some significant things to change. I would like, obviously I would like to see us funding this with fund balance and licensing fees, franchise fees, and some contribution from the public that's using the facilities. We've operated drop-off sites, we've operated HHW programs, we operate all different kinds of battery collection, all of which we operate at no cost to the people that are using them, but they certainly are not at no cost to us. Bob can talk about, and somewhere along the way we're going to have the discussion about what it costs us to collect the batteries in these little boxes that are sitting around everywhere. We recently agreed to contract with a company to do that because it just takes too much of Bob's time to do it. And all these services that we provide come with a price tag. And if the people want these services, they're going to have to figure out a way to pay for them. And I don't believe it's fair to expect our commercial residents and commercial businesses to fund 75% of it.
Commissioner Maxbauer, were you raising your hand?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and then Inman, and then Henschel. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Wheelock, if you want to propose another funding source for resource recovery, I am more than willing to listen to it. The last time we had a surcharge vote is the only time I think I've ever voted for the surcharge vote. I don't think it's right. And as frightening as this may be to you, I agree with you. But we have to fund resource recovery. And right now, this is our only avenue, other than fund balance. And I have to tell you, I think Bob has done an outstanding job in cutting expenses. You know, he's all but taken out an axe and hacked. I think this has to pass.
Okay. Commissioner Redmond?
Just 2 points. One is that, Sonny, I do see commercial owners with their pickup trucks backing up to the recycling bins and unloading their bottles and whatever they have in their business. I'm not going to just, I don't know if it's necessarily disclosed that they're prohibited in using it. And so I don't know if it would be a real correct statement saying that the business owners aren't participating in part of the recycling process at the recycling bins.
Remember, we don't.
To what extent, I don't know, but I'm not going to disclose any names. But the second part is that the other two options that were available to us or three options were a millage, which nobody really wants to put on the ballot. The other options was, I can't remember the PA numbers, but
PA 69.
One's $20-some and the other one's $50-some. And you're having a civil war over the same dollar amount for the septic treatment plant. And I don't think that the public is in any mood to hear about any special assessments for solid waste right now. And it's been a program that has worked, and we haven't, like Dennis said, we haven't heard any complaints from the consumer or other than your representation. I haven't heard any complaints from the commercial side either.
Commissioner Henschel?
I'd like to know, when did resource recovery start, and how was it initially funded?
I'm sorry, it was before my time, and it was certainly before Bob's time, so I can't tell you the origination of it.
Any thoughts, Bob?
Yeah, I'm not absolutely sure.
Yeah, they started with a
50-cent fee.
50 cents a yard was the initial, it's always been funded with a landfill surcharge.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
From the get-go.
And then we shaved it down.
people think, let's not tax individuals, let's tax businesses, tax them. And, the truth is, businesses don't pay tax. You think if you go to the hardware store and buy a hammer, the business is paying the tax? No, it's built into the price. And sure, you might not get complaints. A government's ability to increase its taxes is directly related to its ability to hide those taxes such that people don't notice it. But the fact is, whenever your garbage truck goes by, you're paying this tax right here, just a little bit. And, Ronald Reagan said there's nothing quite so permanent as a temporary government program. From the way this recommendation is worded, it would seem this is a temporary thing that you're trying to make permanent to me. And I'm wary of that. Please.
Well, it's been more than 15 years that the department's been in place. We're required to have a program and a plan according to state law. We have to have a resource recovery plan. But I know you're making a different argument, Commissioner, but the argument you made is the same argument I've made, and that is that, with all due respect, when Commissioner Wheelock says it's business paying it, my response is typically, well, if business is paying it, they're passing it on, the price of their good, to the customer. And the customer is all the people in the county, so in a sense, we're paying it one way or we're paying it another way. And I think so, what I'm saying is, I think, as a resident of this county, I pay it when I dump my garbage, and I pay it when I go to your store and I buy the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I don't think it's completely fair to say it's just business that's paying 75%. because it's built into the prices of whatever you sell.
That's my point.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because you made the statement that nobody's complaining about it, and I'm saying that's because it's buried, it's a tax
You're
on
absolutely
business.
right.
So
Yep.
this is a tax on the people of Grand Traverse County, because you're taxing businesses in Grand Traverse County.
You're absolutely right, and we have had the same discussion in public meeting many, many times, that the people, and Commissioner Thomas is the one who always says it, the people don't complain because they don't realize they're paying it. And we've talked about it on a number of occasions. In fact, for a while, we put signs up on the recycling bins that say, you are paying for this, and it's costing you this much.
Right.
We've done that to try to get people to understand that. But here's the bigger concern, okay? Right now, it's built into your cost of disposal. And the question that I always ask is this: if you take this surcharge and eliminate it, will the waste companies reduce their price?
No.
In a corresponding amount?
No.
If one does, they all will, because it's competition.
If one does, they all will. But right now, they're all competing at this level and dropping everybody's prices. My point is, there's no guarantee that your price at home will go down. It's just gone down. Will it go down again if we take off this surcharge? And if it doesn't, you're going to be paying it in your home garbage rate, and then you're going to have another mechanism to run the program, which may be this special assessment or this other surcharge. So it could turn out that people will pay it twice.
Commissioner Fleece?
You know, Commissioner Maxbauer and I, for the last 5 years, have heard Commissioner Wheelock say he's going to get rid of this surcharge.
Yes,
a little
we have.
hope because he began to talk and Commissioner Maxbauer agreed with him, which is really unusual. But I can
Yes, it
see
is.
it's going to be the status quo again.
And just think, I hit how many subdivisions for Sunny Wheelock?
Commissioner Max Bauer?
Well, I just
Commissioner
wanted
Gilman?
to mention to Bob, Bob, I was in Sears yesterday, and I drove out, and behind Big Lots, I've never seen so much cardboard. I mean, you talk about recycling, it was, I just want you to know, it was like one end of the building to the other, and I'm talking about the entire building. These people are recycling big time.
They are.
And I just wanted to let you know that.
It's huge recycling.
Commissioner Gilman?
I have a question and then a follow-up. What is the purpose of, I mean, other than it being mandated, the program being mandated, what's the purpose?
You're putting less in landfill.
Yeah, our main purpose is to divert material from the landfill.
Right,
and
okay.
into reuse, reduce, and also recycle.
Exactly. And you know, Commissioner Wheelock brings up the point that the businesses are recycling 70-80%. Or they're doing what they can to recycle. And I would argue, what better way to keep them doing that than to keep the consumption of the landfill cost where it's at versus just passing the same cost around to everybody and by assessment, and then who has incentive to reduce their amount of trash?
Are you suggesting taxation is there to promote
No, well,
actions by the
I'm
public?
just saying, the side effect
Alter
of it is
Alter
appropriate,
behavior.
and it's a consumption-based cost.
Jason was
Absolutely
there
right.
when the
Commissioner
concept was developed. He's just going through that stuff.
Commissioner Thomas is going to come out of his chair.
The big problem over the years is the tipping fee has been paid for not only by the commercial and industrial, but the residents that have pickup are paying that tipping fee. It's in their bill. The people who don't have their trash picked up and they were using the free drop-offs, they were the ones that were getting the freebie, and it was being paid for by everybody else, and that's what's wrong with the tipping fee, right there. Now, are we still getting, the drop-offs are still free?
They're being paid for by the
They're
company.
provided by American Waste.
Yeah, yeah.
American
So
Waste.
that cost should be way down because we're not paying that.
Yeah,
Well-
the budget went down $350,000 when we
Yeah.
got rid of
If
the
if we have beat up this subject again once
death.
more enough, I think we're probably ready for a vote, so.
Sure.
By roll call, please.
Henschel,
No.
Inman,
Yes.
Lemkool,
No.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Wheelock?
No.
Lees?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes, motion carries 6-3.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'd just like to congratulate Bob again on the work he's been doing. He just completed his review of our recycling rates. And for those of you who haven't been around, 3-4 years ago, our recycling rate was around 21-22%. Brandy Smith was hired by Kelly Ignis to do it about 4 years ago. It went up to 29%, and Bob just completed it, and we're at over 35% right now. So
And you deserve a great deal of that credit.
he's done a really good job for us.
Oh.
He really has. So thank you, Bob.
Keep up the good work.
You passed again.
Okay, our next item is the appointment of an interim equalization director. And we have our human resources director here. Jen?
Jen Seaman, Human Resources Director. This is an item to, as you all know, Lori Spencer will be leaving us, and we would like to appoint Ernie as the Equalization Director at an interim basis until that position is
To
filled.
him, Chris. Hit him, Chris.
Chris?
Dennis,
Yes.
why is this even on the agenda? And I'm saying this because, you know, you are our employee,
Yes.
and you pick your directors.
State statute requires, and Bob could explain this, that the equalization director is a special appointment that requires appointment by the County Board of Commissioners.
Clarification on that opinion. It's my understanding that the board can delegate that responsibility by resolution to the county administrator, and we've done so with other staff positions, all staff positions, unless otherwise stated by state statute. So, in my opinion, we've basically have done that by virtue of Dennis's contract and the language in his contract that we have designated that all staff and management positions be under the county administrator.
I disagree with that only to the
Okay.
extent that there are certain positions that must be appointed by the county board. I believe you can delegate the authority to, search, interview candidates to staff, not a committee, but to staff. I suppose you could have a committee also, but you could delegate it to staff such as Dennis and Jen to find a qualified candidate, but the board would eventually have to approve that decision.
The board has to make the appointment.
Okay. Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, for discussion purpose, I would move to appoint Ernie, and I apologize, I can never get his last name right, so I'm not even going to try, as the interim equalization director until the position is filled.
Second.
Second by Henschel. Commissioner Lemko?
I guess, what is his qualifications? Is he a
Level 3.
He's a
Level three?
long-term, he's a
Yes.
long-term employee in the department. I think he's been there 15 years, and he's a level 3 assessor.
He is a level 3?
Yes, he is.
But he's not working on a level 4?
No, this is an interim
Because I
appointment.
think that was one of the things we had talked about. The other question I had is that, is there a better way to maybe look at contracting this out with, like Garfield Township or the city of Traverse City or something like that because they both have level 4s?
No,
and I
they
don't know
don't.
if
No, they don't. Garfield
Garfield
Township
has.
has a level 4, the city has a level 3.
Okay.
And we are exploring all those options, but we need to provide some stability to the department in the interim. And so we think it's important, someone has to be in charge there while we go through this process. Ernie's the longest-term employee who is a level 3 assessor, and both has the support of Lori and myself, and I think Jen as well, that he is the one who's most capable of being able to keep that staff working in a forward direction until we can make the decision.
My only concern is I see Ernie working late at hours because of the turnover of some software or something. Is he going to have time?
Yes, he will.
Commissioner
Okay.
Wheelock and then Commissioner Henschel.
Well, I too want to make sure that we look at all the different avenues of how we handle this, whether we can contract this. Last week, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, we approved a company to do a audit of the commercial industrial had to be done for the equalization department. We may be able to contract this, we may be able to do something jointly with the city or Garfield, however, I want to make sure that we look at all the different options. There's another factor that entered in here. If my memory is correct, the current deputy director of equalization is off on medical leave.
Right.
So we did not have that opportunity to move that either.
He's
So,
back part-time, but yes.
but I know he had been off for an extended length of time. So, this probably gets us some stability right now because of Ernie's long tenure. And he knows all of the staff and he knows what's going on. So I think it's probably a good move on an interim. But I certainly want to make sure that we look at all the other options before we make a final decision.
Mr. Henschel?
I actually took a minute and met with Ernie because I had not met him previously. Neat guy. I think he's got the right attitude and the right people skills for this job. He's not crazy about doing this long-term, but he's happy to help out. And I did have a discussion with Dennis, and this is not a long-term. We're talking like 90 days, 6 months, maybe.
As soon as we can get a solution.
This is a real short-term, and we are, Dennis told me he is exploring, you're going to be looking at the possibility of contracting, and we've had a few ideas I've heard floating around, but I think this is the right thing to do for right now.
Mr. Maxbauer?
I would agree with Commissioner Henschel, but Dennis and Jen, I know Garfield, to get a level 4, offered a salary of approximately, what,
82.5.
82.5.
They had 3 applicants. One was the person they hired, one was Ms. Spencer, and one was another individual that we have the name of.
What is our salary?
With a market, it was $72,000, with a 9% market on it, which we put markets on jobs that we cannot be competitive with. So
Okay.
we believe if we look to put a director in, we're going to have to raise that salary.
Okay. How do we do that?
Well, we're going to have to come back and talk to you about that. We're going to have to look at changing the salary or putting a larger market on the salary if the board still holds on reclassification requests.
Okay, so can this board raise that salary for that position?
Absolutely.
Thank
Actually, it doesn't, in the past, it has not required board action to put a market on a position, but with something like this and with what we've gone through the last few years, Jen and I talked about bringing that salary to you with a market, and we have put together a tentative market, but frankly, we advertised for this position 2 weeks ago, Jen. Immediately, once we knew that Lori wasn't going to be there, we're still in the process of advertising because we've now gotten a list of the Michigan equalization directors. So we're sending individual requests to them to consider the position. So to this point in time, we have one application in from an existing employee who is a level 3. We have heard from another level 4 assessor from downstate, equalization director, excuse me, who is looking for $95,000. And so we can't tell you what market is going to be necessary to be able to fill that position if we decide to fill it.
But what I'm saying to you and to Jen is I'm clearly hearing that the salary that we're offering is not attracting applicants.
That's correct. We did not put a salary in the ad. We said to be determined based on qualifications. And what we're telling you is, in order for us to hire someone, we believe that without question, we're going to have to put a market on that salary and raise the salary in order to find someone who meets either that level, perhaps even someone who's at a level 3 who is studying to get the level 4 within a year. They have to have a level 4 within a year.
What does it cost us to get somebody from a level 3 to a level 4? What's the process?
Well, they've just changed the process in the state. It used to be that you studied on your own. It was kind of an extensive process, and then you took an exam after a period of time, and if you passed, you became a level 4 and you were certified. The state, because of the lack of level 4s that are available, has changed their process and set up a formal program that they are running now to bring about, to teach the class and get more level 4s. And as I understand it, it works like this. The state will take 20 applicants at a time. They go through a rigorous training program and at each step have to pass a series of exams. And if they do that over a 6 or 8 month period, I think, they are certified as a level 4 assessor. Okay? They will only take 20. They have 20 in the program right now. In talking to Lori, at the first exam, 14 of the 20 did not pass the first exam, and they're trying to decide whether they're going to open that up. So after this group is done, they will authorize the second class, which will go through the same 8-month process.
Well, as a part of our searching for a replacement, would it behoove us to try to reach out to other level 3s who are willing to go through that process, establish a contract with them for a period of time where we could help them through that process in the meantime? In other words, it might be worth our while, based on trying to keep our salary levels at a point where we can afford it as well down the road, and as far as looking forward for several years.
We've had those thoughts, and that is one of the options that we are looking at. In fact, we believe that probably, in all likelihood, if we don't get a level 4 and we decide to hire a level 3, there are two things that must happen. First, the individual must be enrolled in this state level 4 program, because if they're not, they will not be able to complete their level 4 certification even if they're successful. And the second part of that is because the state says once you've hired a level 3, you have 1 year for them to become a level 4. And my point of explaining that class process to you was, at the present time, the state is only holding one class of 20 people in a year period. So we either have to find somebody who is at a level 4, or we have to find somebody who's at a level 3 and who is in the process of studying for the level 4. Okay? And so that's kind of what we're working through. And if we hire somebody that's a level 3, what we will do is we will try to find somebody who is working on the 4 and probably hire them on an interim basis at a lower salary with a 1-year contract to say, if you attain a level 4 status.
Dennis, we have a contract right now with East Bay Township, do we not?
We do.
And how is this affected?
Well, I think we're going to have to talk with the board. I talked with the chairman and I talked with a couple of commissioners today. It doesn't affect that because they only require a level 3. We can continue that contract. That contract expires or is up for renewal again on June 30th of 2012, so next June. The contract can be broken by either party with a 90-day notice to the other party. Just in very preliminary brief discussions with Glenn Lyle, when we talked about this I talked with him in the audience, and he said his intention at that time anyway was to continue the program through the contract term. But I know you'll remember, Commissioner, this has always been a very contentious issue, whether we do assessment for a township or not. And if the board wants to open those discussions, my suggestion would be that we do so within the next couple of months and make a determination whether we're going to continue the program with East Bay or not, and then give the East Bay, continue the contract through June 30th of next year, but give them as much notice as possible to say, we're terminating, we're not going to renew the contract next year, if it's the board's choice, so they have ample time to prepare to take the program over themselves.
And Ernie understands that he's going to assume these responsibilities not only for the county but for East Bay Township?
Yeah, he's very sure, I mean, he understands that completely. Also, we have 3 people that basically work in East Bay Township with and Lori, and one of them is the deputy director who's off ill now, and then we have 2 full-time people, a level 3 assessor and a level 2 assessor that work out there regularly. The one concern I have in this, well, there's a number of concerns, but the biggest concern I have in this whole process is this, right? One of Lori's main functions that she spends a good deal of time on is testifying before the tax tribunal. We are not going to have anybody that we believe will have the ability to go down and testify before the tax tribunal. And that's the one thing that I cannot answer for you today, how we're going to deal with that issue. That's something we're still working on.
Okay, everybody understand the motion?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation from the Cadillac Insurance Center on insurances for 2012.
Jen, you going to do some introduction or
Sure.
get them started? For those of you who may not know, there's a sign over there that tells you what the status is.
Here from Cadillac Insurance, we have Brian Cote and Jennifer Martin, and I will turn the presentation over to them.
Please make sure you have the microphone in front of you when you talk.
All right. Good afternoon, or good evening again, everybody. Good to see you. A real quick question as I go through this. This is going to be similar to what we did for some of your employees already, and just show of hands, how many people are taking this benefit yourselves? So, we've got a few. Okay, so cool. I mean, really, to make it relevant, if there's questions as it relates to you and how the whole thing's going to work, please ask them, and I think that'll help cement maybe what we're trying to do here for the rest of the employees. So, if we could do that, I will go ahead and get started. And Jennifer Martin, just a little more introduction, is going to be working with Val and I as part of the implementation team to make sure all the employee meetings are met and the execution with transferring the data over to Blue Cross Blue Shield and the other things we've been asked to do. So, with this, who are we? Is it to the employees? We're a new name to work with, letting them know top of mind that we do have 24/7 customer service, that just because maybe your provider isn't there or the Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance company's not open, if you need to get a script filled at 7 o'clock at night, that's a real issue. And if they're declining it, they can get a hold of us. And it will get escalated to someone in our office, and we'll work with that person to do to our best of our ability to resolve the issue. In addition, claims and billing questions, provider coverage, really anything that pertains to the benefit packages of medical, dental, vision, the HRA, which is a new term and concept for your employees, and we're going to show you how that works in a little more detail. Flexible spending accounts. It's important, I think, from an employee's perspective, that they don't sign up for a benefit that you're paying for and that they ended up using their dollars to pay for insurance coverage that unfortunately was denied and they don't know it. And it says that it is their responsibility and they just turn it in. We will audit those. And in the example, and I know I use this when we were trying to gain your business, Money Magazine quoted 80% of all hospital bills are billed incorrect. We will go through our process to audit them, and we're not perfect, but it's our job, especially when it's the employee's money too, like we're going to do with your HRA, is to keep the carrier ultimately responsible to process those correctly, as well as your life insurance and disability insurance. Okay, what does this look like? Well, at the point of service, typically the employee calls, they've got a question, and we do ask them to question everything because we know a lot of things are sent out and misprocessed. So they can fax or email to us, and a claims specialist will get back to them through phone call within 2 business hours. And with that, from there, we'll contact the provider, the collection agency, and the insurance carrier to ultimately try to put together a blueprint based on what the challenge is to try to resolve and fix it. From there, we'll update the employee with the status of the claim. And I'm going to tell you, that's sometimes where we get the perceptions that we fall down. It's because, a real simple example, today, 90% internally, 90% of mammograms are processed incorrectly. It's a new law that mammograms are covered under PPACA, under preventative. Well, the providers aren't used to doing that, so they bill it out as diagnostic. So the challenge is we have to call the physician, and they have to call their billing company, and that can take 6 weeks to 6 months. We'll do our best to educate the employee, and we'll do our best to check in with them periodically, and they might get those collection notices because Munson and all the other providers, they want to get paid. But we will check in with them periodically and let them know what we're doing, and then from there, ultimately, when it's supposed to be processed differently and correctly, we will get those turned around. And that's hopefully gives you a visual of the steps we go through when working to help assist your employees and yourselves. And again, we touched on earlier, we do offer that 24/7. So kind of a broad overview of who we are is hopefully an advocacy program to keep the integrity of the benefit that you have here, and you've got a great benefit, and the employees are used to it, but ultimately trying to keep it whole with what you agreed to with the carrier. So now we enter this new term called an HRA, which, I think from your seats and your perspective is going to help your budget and will save you some money. Now, from the employee's perspective, it's kind of scary. What does this mean? I've got a $5,000 deductible. I signed up for a $0 deductible. The hospital called Blue Cross, and they confirmed that. It can be scary. So what we try to do on the front end before we start is educate them. And this is one of the resources we use, where essentially we're showing them what we're buying, which is on the left side. Page up, sorry about that, which is on the left side. We're buying a $5,000 individual, $10,000 family deductible, and what we're reimbursing down to, which is 0. And on the percent co-pays, on the office visit, the chiro, and the emergency room, it is different than what you've told them their benefit is. It's different than what Jennifer has signed them up to in the past. That's what we're buying, but then we're reimbursing to something which is exactly what they've had. And we'll do our own ID cards that shows exactly this, and they'll flip it over. So if that provider says this doesn't make sense, they can call us. And right there, we'll let them know that we're a licensed paid provider for Blue Cross Blue Shield. You do have an HRA plan document in place, and that is the benefit, which is on the right side, and they'll get a payment from us. So, with this, there's no additional paperwork on any of the medical items I just showed you, because we will pay the provider directly. So typically, the issue that comes up, and it happens typically only once, that the employee, on the hospital side, hospitals rarely know if you've met your deductible. So that's pretty easy. They're going to bill Blue Cross Blue Shield. They're typically, when you leave the hospital, they're not going to say, you have a $5,000 deductible, you owe us, because typically they don't know if you've met it or not. So that's usually okay. It's the doctor's office visit, the chiro visit, the ER visit, where they show a flat $250 copay. And typically, when I use that doctor's office example, it's just the first time. Because under the provider contract, they can't bill and receive payment from the patient and then get payment from us. It's in violation of their contract. So typically, if the employee just lets them know you're going to get paid, most of providers today recognize that we have a third-party payment system set up. But if they don't, a couple things are going to happen. First off, that employee turns this into us right away. We'll reimburse them. If they don't, we will pay the provider. We'll probably pay them that week. And if they've received 2 levels of payment, what typically happens is they set up a credit for the employee so that next time they're there, that $30 is there for them to use. Technically, if the employee calls and creates a little bit of a fuss, they'll send them a check, and they have to. But if there's any heartburn at all in doing this process and getting it started, it's this, at the doctor's office. And I can guarantee you, after that first payment they've received, they don't want to hassle with setting up different billing systems or collecting from the employee. It's typically resolved after the first time. But we try to let them know that it's not perfect and there may be issues. Okay, now we look at the prescription. You currently have a $10 generic, $40 brand. But before I get into that and get a little bit deeper into what the management of it is, I went through that quickly. I'm trying to be sensitive to everybody's time. How are we doing on the HRA and how the resource we're using here, this tool to educate people? Does it make sense to you guys, especially those who are on the health insurance?
What's HRA stand for?
Health Reimbursement Arrangement.
Okay, and who funds the HRAs, the employer or the employee?
Great question. It can only be funded by the employer. You come up with the dollars from the premium savings, which is significant. Unlike maybe some other options that you looked at as part of the RFP process when you're looking at other people like us to do this, where they bring in a third party to do this, we don't require any pre-funding. Even Blue's seamless system, they require up to 7 to 10% pre-funding of maximum liability, which effectively the first month would wipe out your cash flow savings. We don't require that. It's reimbursed by the employer. We'll register all the claims and all the checks written by Thursday. We'll send an email to Jennifer in this example. She'll say it's okay to pay, and we'll let those checks go out and pay them all. And currently, we're going to probably pay over 100,000 claims this year out of our office.
Okay, so the county will fund the HRA every year, or is it just a revolving fund?
It kind of is. Again, you're looking at close to a $2 million savings in premium reduction, of which you'll reimburse, if we budget 50%, which I think is high. We'll only ask for that when we need it, and that will be done on a weekly basis.
So Dean will watch this, and he'll know what the number is, and we'll put the cash in the fund so that it can be drawn out on a timely basis, but we'll only put it in there as we need it. But what that relates to, Commissioners, is that purchase plan where you see deductible $5,000, $10,000. In other words, we're going to put that money aside for each employee, hypothetically, and whatever that first deductible, $5,000 for a single, $10,000 for a family, we're going to pay those pieces of it through this mechanism weekly.
Thank you.
Real potential. I'm looking, I purchased my own health insurance, and I want everyone to know that my health insurance went up $100 a month between this year and next year. So, emergency room, purchase plan, and I'm still trying to adjust to new glasses. $250, and then I'm seeing reimbursed plan $35. So, how much does the employee pay? 35? Ah.
And at 35, it's actually the whole copay is waived if you're admitted or it's an accidental injury. So then
Really?
they're not paying anything.
This is a good plan.
But if it's Brian, if it's a $250 cost, The employee's going to pay $35, correct? The other $215 gets paid how? By the employer's part of the deductible that we're setting aside for the employer. And so where you make money, where you save money on this deal is, since we're taking the deductibles, we're like risking the deductibles in a sense ourselves. But national average shows that when you set that aside, you really only end up spending 40% of it. That's the average and national average. Their average is more like 30%. Okay, so if we only spend 30% or 40%, we're saving the other 60% or 70% off of what our normal premiums are, and that's savings to the county.
Well, I think everyone should know that my emergency room visits are $150. So this is $35. This is good.
My concern about this is more the education of the employees as to how this program works. Because if they buy into it the way it should be, they're part of the solution. And when they're part of the solution, our premiums go down. And it's really a critical piece on the education of employees, and particularly new employees when they come on. Because if somebody's not there continually educating this process, you're not going to have the buy-in.
Well,
With that too, because that is very important, not for the employees, but for us as well, is
Yeah.
to make sure they
for us,
fully
too.
understand it, so it works for all of us. That way next year and the year after, we can continue to go down this path. With that in mind, we do claims clinics. So we're gonna come in, do the educational meetings up front, like Brian's doing here, go through a similar PowerPoint, and then we're gonna also come back 2-3 months later after they've started to use it a little bit, when problems do start to occur, because they forget how to use this plan. We're gonna sit down in a room where they can sign up and meet with us one-on-one. So, because education is very important.
we have also already met with, CIC has already met with the unions, the union representatives and their business agents, and gone over this presentation. Because what we're proposing to you tonight is, first of all, we have contractual obligations to keep the level of service, this level of insurance the same. So the $35 you see there for emergency room, it can't be any more than what we contractually agreed to in our old plan. But what we're proposing to you tonight is a PPO, not an HMO, a higher level plan. For some reason, it came in cheaper, okay? So we had to go and meet with the unions so that I'm probably stealing their thunder, but what we had to do is we had to go and meet with the unions and try to say, you're going to need to sign an agreement with us that says the base plan isn't what you're going to have. You're going to have an HMO base plan, that's always your base plan, but we're going to provide you a little better plan now because we got it cheaper. We'll have to, but the base is still the HMO. But the important part here is that we wanted to get buy-in from the union so they understand that the impact on them is going to be negligible.
So ultimately, what we're doing as the county, what the county is doing is actually then providing, being a self-insured to a certain level, and then the rest of it, the higher level, the unlimited goes to the insurance company. So, I mean, that's a good way to save a lot of money.
That's exactly what it is. It's a partial self-funded program in a sense. And here's the other thing to remember. The cost of a fully funded premium program, fully funded, is roughly the same as the cost of this program if we spent 100% of the deductibles.
Pretty much, yeah.
Almost the same. So where they're saying the national average is 40, if we spent 100%, we'd be paying what we'd be paying for the fully funded premium like we have all these years. So if we get by at 50 or 60 or 40, it's money we save.
Do we put that money in the account for the next year? How does that work?
Well, no, what we did is, you'll remember, we budgeted for next year at a $700,000 savings.
Okay.
So roughly, we've got $1.3 million.
But do we carry over from one year to the next?
Well, we don't put it in there
So you
unless
don't
we
put it-
need
okay,
it.
all right.
So what it means is if we budgeted it at 60% or 67% and we only spend 40, it'll end up in fund balance.
Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, what I'm hearing is it behooves our employees, it behooves everybody, benefits everybody, to be healthy. Is there an incentive?
A wellness component?
Yes.
Well, you know that built into the contracts next year, if they go through the wellness component.
Well, I understand that, Dennis, but
Okay.
I guess where I'm coming from is from my experience. What Shell has done is they have a wellness program, and if you participate in an athletic event once a year or twice a year, you get a certain dollar amount that is applied to your health care premiums. And that's kind of where I'm going. Is there...
What we have is, if they go through the health assessment, which is part of our wellness program, their copay on insurance will be 6% of the premium instead of 8%. So it's a 2% savings, so it's pretty significant if they go through that component of it. There will be other wellness programs that they will be able to engage in if they so choose. So it's minimal, but it's a start. But the other incentive, besides that 2%, is if we go into this plan, their premium, they're going to pay 6% on their premium. The premium's going to go down. Collectively, if everybody stays healthier, theoretically, the premiums will stay low. Yeah. And so I think because they're going to be more engaged in this, and this is how Brian sold it to us, because they're going to be more engaged in this, and they're going to understand this program more, and they're paying part of it, they're going to be better educated, right, Brian?
Hope so.
Commissioner Gilman?
When we start looking at future underwriting, then, when these contracts run out and those mandated changes become in effect, the 20% or 15% or whatever the state is telling us we're going to.
Right.
That also then affects their costs at that time, too.
Clearly it does.
Keeping their costs down.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of great points we can touch on. I mean, Public Act 152 is going to do a huge favor for your county and many others. We had a conference call with the state this week on it, and it's kind of interesting to hear how they're going to police it. But to your wellness point, I would encourage all you guys, if you can, October 28th, we do an annual lunch and learn down in Mount Pleasant, because a lot of our counties and public sector groups are from all over the state. We do get a lot of commissioners that show up, and we're going to have a whole component. We've got a wellness expert coming in, because I think the next evolution in healthcare is truly how do we hold our employees accountable to wellness standards. But not only that, as consumers, I mean, if you're doing an HRA, we have all the pricing, so we kind of know where the cheaper MRIs are. And so for elective procedures, wouldn't it be cool if you could give them an incentive if they could save you $1,500 on an HRA by maybe driving down to Mercy in Cadillac?
Yeah.
Not trying to push business out of town, and I'm not saying that's a valid example.
I understand that.
But the point is, under an HRA, it's savings. It's $2 million. You're not reimbursing it if you save $1,500. And likewise, mammograms are cheaper up here. And if we could at least provide that transparency, but that's a whole nother conversation that I think these guys are engaged with. That long term, you're going to want to know, because it's going to impact your costs. And wellness is key to that. Wellness and consumerism.
Wellness is huge.
So, but October 28th, 10 to 1, there's no charge. We provide lunch, and I think there are a lot of these type of blue sky ideas are going to be provided. All right, so we're cool on the medical piece? All right, now the prescription. We take a layer of what we're doing on the medical with a reimbursement, and we do it to the prescription, where now we're buying a $10 generic, which is what they're used to, a $40 brand, and for those non-preferred brands, they're paying $80 for, of which, when it's $80, we're going to reimburse them down to $40, because that's what they're used to paying. So what does this mean? Well, generic's a generic, and the example I like to give is statin drugs, cholesterol-reducing drugs. You've got your Simvastatin, which is generic Zocor, okay? You can pay $10 for it. Or if you prefer to take Crestor, you can do so, and you could pay $40. If you want to take Lipitor, you could do that as well, and you pay $80. With this program, there was such a significant savings by going to a triple tier, but not to penalize the employee. If they have to pay $80, they pay the $80, and they'll turn it in, they'll get reimbursed $40. They'll be kept whole with their current $10 generic, $40 brand copay. You're sitting there and probably saying, why would we do that? Well, the savings was so huge when the Blues PPO program quoted it with this drug card.
we included it into the mix, and it provided about an extra $300,000 of savings, of which you'll probably reimburse about a third of it, so you'll be left with a net $200,000.
Well, this is a big concern for the employees. It's been one of the issues that they still are trying to wrap their arms around. Because this is different. They won't pay more than 40, but they will have to file paperwork and get reimbursed for 40 if they have the $80 drug. But the important thing is, anytime they decide to take an $80 drug, they will have a $40 and a $10 alternative. There will be no $80 drug that doesn't have a 40 or a 10 alternative, correct? So if they don't want to pay the 80, they can get the generic of it and pay 10.
How does our county drug card work on this for NACO?
It has no bearing on it.
No. It doesn't?
No, it's one or the other.
Affect any of our employees?
No, you can take that in and see if it's cheaper.
Well, I'm sure it's better, but I'm just, we got a county drug card that we promote.
Right, but you can't use insurance with it, so this is a better benefit than that card, so you won't find many of our employees using that card.
Just a question.
Yep.
Christine?
Okay. Does the employee have to pay the full portion of the purchaser's plan, then get reimbursed by the county, or does the provider bill the county the difference?
Yeah, great question. I assume in that example, you're talking about medical claims?
Yes.
Office visit, Cairo, deductibles, co-insurance. The nice thing with the seamless feed on the medical, it applies for all the medical. So the provider, if they don't do anything, they're going to get paid from us in all those red marks. They're going to be reimbursed down to that from our office. So no, the employee won't have to be out. The example we gave a few minutes ago is what will happen and could happen is the first time they go to their primary care physician and the doctor says, oh, we checked you online, you have a $40 copay, you give them our card, it says 10, and it says if you have any questions on it, you turn it over or call us. That first time they go, the provider might say, no, we're going to really make you pay 40. That provider's under contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield that if they do that and they get a check from us, they have to refund it or they're in violation of their contract and could lose it. What typically happens is the employee will pay because the employee doesn't let us know soon enough, and that provider's got a credit then for the employee. But if the employee pays it and gets us the receipt, we'll cut them a check that week. But this has worked so nicely. A lot of counties used to do the second submit on all medical claims in addition to pharmacy, and all around you, we've been doing this now since 2003. They got used to it, the employees did. They hated it, they got used to it, and now under Public Act 152, it's going to save money. This does the same thing, but all the medical claims, the provider will get paid directly on.
So the employee is going to have two cards, though. So they're going to have their Blue Cross card, and they're also going to have a second card that we're going to give them. They're going to show that at the doctor's office, and that's going to let the doctor's office know, yes, we do see a $40 copay, but they actually only pay 10 because the administrator's paying that other 30.
Okay.
And the same goes for the deductible services as well.
My copay went up from 20 to 25, just so everybody knows.
I think it's important to note that the doctor's office doesn't bill the county.
Right.
We aren't putting any more work on our accounting program. They bill Cadillac Insurance. They're the ones that are going to take care of all the bookkeeping and accounting, they'll keep track of that. The only thing Dean and the accounting people have to do is write the check on a weekly basis.
And then basically, you're settling up every week with the county, right?
Technically, because it's a zero fund balance, we're not going to submit a check until we receive the money. So we'll process all the checks. We commit that they'll go out Thursday by noon. We'll send an electronic report to whomever you designate here. They'll say, yep, looks good, and then they will usually electronically transfer those over to our account. We'll write checks on your behalf. Yep.
Does that have to go through claims and account?
We haven't gotten that far yet.
Yeah, we'll go through the administrative piece. I mean, every county pretty much handles it the same way.
I think it's up to, because that could slow down the process.
Well, it could, and we'll have to look into that, and we'll have to come up with a process to recommend to you, but off the top of my head, I would say we don't want to get in a situation where our employees have to wait 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Right.
I mean, paychecks don't go through claims and accounts.
Correct.
Why would this?
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Good point.
And I think from a peace of mind perspective, anytime you guys want to go through all the claims data, so we're not sending our claims through through your report, because we send it to them, it's just a clean macro basis of all the claims we've adjudicated. We don't give names in the electronic report. They are sent HIPAA, they're secure, so they'll be password protected, but if you guys ever want to go through that detail, we've got it all. And this is just letting the employees know, again, this is only for prescription and only if you pay $80. And as Dennis said, great point, if you want to do it, that's fine. And but there's a cheaper alternative at 10 generic or 40 non-preferred brand, or excuse me, preferred brand. They do have to provide us a documentation with this form that just basically is letting you, the county, know that they're not going to submit this claim somewhere else. You can't double dip. You can't submit it to an FSA administrator and then reimburse for an HRA. And yes, we do get some creative people that kind of forget that, but we do audit it, so we call and kindly let them know that they can't do it both ways. This is a form stating that they can't do that, and this is, we don't have the paperwork on this one. So what this is for then is your, just for the prescription. So to your point, you're not doing this on medical. It's only for prescription if you're paying the $80, or if you're doing a mail order and you're paying 2 times copay, where your contract says 1 time, they would get reimbursed the same way as well. A lot of questions, as Dennis said. I think they were comfortable with it. A lot of your union people here that represent your unions at the county, they know us from other counties because they've been doing it for several years. So I think they were pretty satisfied with the answers and the questions being presented. Okay, what you guys want to see is the financial impact. I shouldn't say only want to see, but I think the significant piece. Again, what we're buying is on the left. There are your rates as it relates to single, 2-person, and family for that plan, and there's your total premium, and there's total premium including compensation, there's administrative fees for managing that, and that does include your FSA, which is your flexible spending account, and your COBRA compliance that's required, and that is your total impact prior to claims being reimbursed that you're going to look at. So in your budget, beginning next year, beginning when you start this January 1st, you're looking at $150,000 cash flow that it's going to impact you in January. And then at the end of January, we'll see how much we reimburse, and that'll be your net savings.
All the drugs again that people take.
So 2 important things to note here. This is not Blue Care Network we're recommending. This is Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the second thing is what I talked to you about earlier. It's not an HMO. This is a PPO. PPO meaning you don't have to go to your primary doctor to get permission to go to the foot surgeon. You can go right to the foot surgeon. I think you can go to University of Michigan. You can go to Mayo Clinic. Anybody who accepts the Blue Cross PPO, you can go to them, which is a big benefit to our employees that they don't currently have.
This is also going to cover retirees, and how is this going to work for retirees?
Jen, you want to take that? That's different, that's separate. Or you
I
got
would assume under age 65 in that example, because over age 65, they're not changing anything. They're keeping that with BCN.
Right, that's going to stay with the same
They're
plan.
staying with BCN?
Yes.
Right. Under age 65, similar. We move them into this process as well, which most counties, just about everyone does do. Early adopters, they would not have the retirees go through this process because they thought it was confusing, and we used to have to have them submit paperwork for every claim because we don't have to anymore. It's seamless. All counties state pretty much send them through.
Is that another reason why our premium's so much lower, because we're not putting the retirees in this program?
Not necessarily. Under age 65, they pay the same premium as actives. It's because, again, I know carriers hate when I say this, but you're cutting profit out. I mean, that's essentially what this is doing. They hate us for doing this, but that's effectively what it does.
Just to clarify, we have 2 groups of retirees. Early retirees, pre-65, which is what Brian was referring to, and then just regular retirees, if you will, that are over age 65. Those that are over, or 65 and over, will be in the same plan that they were in currently this year.
Will their premiums drop as much as everybody else's?
No.
No. That group, BCN did have an increase on those rates. And we would have had to make a change by August 15th, I believe is the date, or 16th, one of those dates, in order to make that change effective for January 1st. There's a lot of rules and regulations with MAPD plans, and we would have had to make a change by then and notify the employees, and that did not occur. So, but they will be in the same plan that they currently have.
So there's another plan called Senior Care or something, and I'm just wondering if that's something that we can go into next year to help them to maybe reduce their premiums, because, I mean, let's face it, when you're retired, and you got an increase in your premiums, you're reducing the amount of money you can spend at someplace else.
Right, and I think we talked about this at the conference, the MAC conference up here. What you're doing is you're doing an alternative, a Medicare Advantage plan right now, like Senior's Choice, which I think is what you're referring to. And it works very similar. You've identified a savings by doing that, and this is similar to that. Can we shop that to a Senior's Choice or other Medicare Advantage alternatives? We can. There are certain carrier rules that sometimes don't allow for that, and that would be another area we'd have to go to the carriers to see if they would allow.
Well, I just think we need to be cognizant of the concerns of some of the retirees, because, we promised them a lot of things, and we just kept pulling and pulling and pulling. So we still are putting $100,000, I think, in our budget into that, and they're cost sharing, and, and it keeps going up, and pretty soon you might as well pay the whole premium.
And they definitely can shop it on their own. There are a lot of counties that have said, you know what, we're not sponsoring a program anymore, and go find it on your own. And you can do a skinny down version of a Medicare Part D. You get Parts A and B, and you could buy some sort of supplement to help offset some of those claims that aren't covered by Medicare.
But our intention is to, this next year, relook at the senior program to see what or the retiree program, to see what we can do to make that a little more acceptable.
Commissioner Maxbar?
Okay. When we moved from Priority Health to Blue Care Network, certain drugs were challenged by the Blue Care Network. Will the same thing happen by changing from an HMO to a PPO?
I think the appropriate question is not from an HMO to a PPO. The question would be from Blue Care Network to Blue Cross Blue Shield. Brian, do you want to answer it?
Yeah, it's a pain. I mean, it is. The pharmacy world, I think there's a lot of room for more regulation. And so, they're going to have their own list. We gave you the one statin drug example. Those are pretty consistent among all. They use PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers, and in a managed care HMO or PPO. They're similar, but they're not identical. So, it's going to be some aggravation. And we tell those employees that. Just because it was approved through Priority, it wasn't approved through BCN. BCN probably took care of some. And yes, if it happens on PPO, we might be able to take care of some. But the reality is they're going to have to go a step process that is going to have to be done. And unless that physician can provide proper documentation. But it is an aggravation. We'll work with them and assist them. And in the end, they'll be able to get their scripts.
Well, we're likely to have some of the same issues come up that we did at the beginning of this year when we switched to Blue Care Network. We'll have some of the same issues when we switch again next year. We weighed all that in this discussion, but when you look at $1,900,000 in savings, it's worth some, in my mind, it's worth some aggravation. We can all, we'll have to all pitch in a little bit to get through this again and make the change, because it saves a lot of money.
Okay, Commissioner Gilman.
Just to clarify, the $1,900,000 is before we're billed back?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for people watching.
Yeah. We're estimating $700,000.
And is that the whole amount, or is that before the employees pay their 6 or 8%?
That's the whole amount. Correct? Make sure I got that right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
not
This
good.
does not include the employee premium
Right.
share. This is pre-employee premium share.
Right.
So
That's
in
correct.
other words, that's
Would be-
the whole cost, and employees are going to be paying some percentage of that?
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Roughly 6%.
Right, okay. All right, we actually, I think, are at the point of the recommendation to switch the health insurance plan. Do I have a motion from someone?
Well,
Is there more presentation?
Brian, was there anything
Well, I
else
think
that
there were
you
a couple
needed
other
to address?
things
Go ahead.
that they want us to, there's another slide here. The dental.
I think they're gonna, you guys want to talk about the health first before going to the dental? Or would you like to?
Why don't we do the health thing and then talk about the dental? That's the order it's in the packet, so if we can check something off here and keep moving.
Jen, do you have
that'd be
anything
great.
you have to add before they consider a motion? Okay.
Move, we change our carrier.
And to adopt the the
To
HRA
the
plan
HRA.
with a PPO with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Okay.
Beginning
Any further
January
discussion?
1st, 2012.
Commissioner Inman?
As previously disclosed by the board, and meeting with Civil Counsel Bob Cooney, and my relationship with the Michigan Association of County Service Corporation and their somewhat relationship with Cadillac Insurance Company with regard to financial matters, and that inadvertently, when Cadillac Insurance Company does sell a healthcare plan to a county under the Blue Cross system, the Michigan Association of County Service Corporation does benefit financially. And it's just one of those mutual working relationships. They're at our conference promoting the products, those kinds of things. So,
Commissioner, how do you benefit financially?
well, I have a fiduciary responsibility on that board of directors, which receives financial income from Blue Care Network. So that's the bottom line.
But you're not the one with the conflict, it's the service corporation.
Yeah, but as a board of directors, I have a fiduciary responsibility on there to vote to maintain that contract with Blue Care Network.
You are going to recuse yourself on this, is that what
Correct.
you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
Commissioner Goins, did you have a comment?
And I do have the
Commissioner
agreement.
Lemko, I'm
And
sorry.
I do have the agreement from Civil Council.
Okay. If there's any further discussion, by roll call, please.
Inman.
Abstain.
Limcool.
Yes.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Fleece.
Yes.
Gilman.
Yes.
Henschel.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. And now we're going to talk about the dental, is that correct?
I don't think there's any news there, other than they want to maintain it with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Like Dennis said, in future years, we'll definitely look at that and shop it out. And I think in terms of this year, though, with regard to what you're currently doing, the increase you received, I think the decision's been made to stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And Jennifer, I'm speaking out of turn. I know we just got some new news, but it's worked good for you guys, as well as on the life and disability. We do have a carrier that would actually match a renewal rate that was reduced and give you a 3-year rate guarantee. And one of our suggestions was to move to them because it gives you an extra year of rates at a lower reduced rate than what you're currently paying. And that was the other option that we explored with them, and they thought they were in agreement with, so.
So what are you asking us to do?
Well, I'm reading the slide. I think in the end, they would like to keep the dental rate where it's at, and they'd like to move the life and disability, which would be no change in benefit to the employees. It would be a reduction in cost for your board or for your budget, and would give you 3 years of rate guarantees. Lincoln was able to do that for your county as part of a...
So we're recommending Blue Cross Blue Shield for the dental and Lincoln Financial for the life and disability.
Two different motions on that?
I don't think it
No,
matters.
it's combined in one. Why did the premium go down for the life and disability?
Why?
Yeah, well, I think, we've got the largest block of government in the state, and so we don't really quote you guys out. We quote all of them out, and we leverage it. I've been doing it since 1999, so they want your business, and Aetna's good, but we've got a better relationship with Lincoln.
So if 2 years from now, we found somebody, or you found someone who's even cheaper on life and disability, we could change from Lincoln Financial to somebody else, and we're not committed to 3 years. They're just going to guarantee the rate for 3 years. Okay.
Motion to
Commissioner
approve
Fleece?
the Blue Cross Blue Shield dental and to go to Lincoln Financial for life and disability.
Support.
Commissioner Fleece?
I was going to make the motion, but
Sorry about that.
Any further
Can't get a word
discussion?
Just a question. Is this typical, the Blue Cross Blue Shield dental going up 10% in a year?
No. Go ahead.
I don't know how the pricing was evaluated. You got a pretty good deal when you moved to Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I think this 10% is a pretty fair increase, considering.
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we drop, last year it went down $100,000?
2 years ago.
2 years
We had a
ago,
2-year
our
rate
dental
guarantee
went
from
down
dental.
100,000.
It went down 100,000, so now we're,
Make up.
I think the moral of the story is bid, often and well,
Bid
it's-
often.
it's changing all the time.
Bid often, okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
You need a roll call vote
You
on
need a
this.
roll call again? Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Lemco.
Yes.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yep.
Wheelock.
Yes, ma'am.
Fleece.
yes.
Gilman.
Yes.
Henschel.
Yes.
Inman.
Abstain.
Richardson.
Yes. Okay, motion passes.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you again. And just one maybe last clarification with regard to getting a better paying less, and that maybe suggesting it's all carrier profit. I don't you're taking on some risk here, and I think there's trade-offs, so I just want to clarify that I'm sure this doesn't go all to the carrier's pocket, the difference you're going to be saving, because there is some risk involved. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Just a question, when you're doing this, when one of our employees needs to work with Blue Cross Blue Shield, they're better off to work with you, and so you're taking Blue Cross right out of the program, and I think that's really good. My experience in this last week, Blue Cross or Blue Care Network doesn't even know who their providers are, because we had to call to get approval, and they went, we don't know who the providers are that are in our list. They didn't even know who the list was, and very, very, very frustrating. Well, you got to work with your doctor. Well, now you got to work with your insurance agent, or insurance company. Well, you got to work with Great Northern Benefits, and none of them knew anything. So you had to start calling around to different providers, say, do you accept Blue Cross? And so, it was really frustrating.
Well, one of the things we'll encourage to call us first, Jen, actually, I'm glad she's part of the implementation team, because she's moved counties to BCN successfully over the last 24 months, and they've stayed. So again, using us first, our resources, and firing us if we don't get it taken care of. It's not perfect, though, but we'll do our best to try to keep it together.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a discussion of the purchasing policy. Bob?
Steps up to the plate. The pitch.
Bob, do you get the feeling that everybody's staring at you?
It's too late to care.
That was good.
I don't know. Our ball game score ran away.
Is this the Sonny Wheelock report from last month? Okay.
Like it or not, I have 19 slides here. Bob Cooney, Deputy
This is
Civil
my
Counsel.
bad day, you can report.
And I have
Sonny.
19 slides. My intent is to get through it in about 10 minutes here. And basically what I wanted to do was give you a overview of what our purchasing policy is and all of the policies and laws that we have to be concerned about when we talk about contracts between public servants, employees or officials, and the county. And hopefully by giving you that background, you can make an informed decision about whether you want to make any changes to the current purchasing policy as was discussed at last month's regular board meeting. So first of all, there are several policies and laws that we have to be concerned about. First of all, there's state statute 15.321, et cetera. And that statute is the state law that basically guides when public officials can contract with the public entity that they work for. And then there's the Grand Traverse County Employment Policy, Grand Traverse County Code of Ethics, board rules, and purchasing policy. In 2007, you should know that we went through an extensive revision of all of those policies. Actually, the purchase or the employment policy was added at that time. And the reason for that was because the current board rules actually forbade any contracts between members of committees, boards, and authorities and the county. Okay? It did allow commissioners themselves to contract with the county, but it also had some vague language about what the disclosure requirements were, and it contained a three-quarters voting requirement. And so we added the employment policy, which basically is a summary of the state laws. It's not any different than what state law requires, and those are at least the minimum requirements for contracts between public employees and the public entities that they work with throughout the state. The board rules were amended. As I indicated, it eliminated the prohibition on contracting with another board, commission, or authority, like the Parks Commission. The three-quarters voting rule and vague language regarding disclosure. Code of Ethics was amended to clarify that there was no prohibition on contracts. It contained some vague language about the appearance of impropriety that perhaps could be interpreted as overriding the state statute and what it allows. The purchasing policy previously stated that no officer or employee of Grand Traverse County could have any financial interest in any contract entered into by the county. So prior to 2007, we probably shouldn't have been entering into those contracts, at least under the purchasing policy at the time. Other boards and authorities and commissions were encouraged to adopt these amended policies back in 2007. And in a nutshell, what all this means is that we revise those policies to get them more in line with what the state law requires. As a general rule, public servants may not contract with the public entity that they serve. There are exceptions for part-time public servants and a few other exceptions in the law, the state law. The old law, I think if you go back to the 1950s, there were no contracts at all allowed between public entities and public servants. Those laws were amended over time. Smaller counties especially complained that the owner of the local lumber yard, for example, wouldn't have the ability to serve on a county board because there was too much of an opportunity that the county would need to contract with the lumber yard, for example. And so there were exceptions created for smaller counties, and those changed over time. But the current law is from 1975, and it essentially, and it states this in the statute, that the idea is to create the same rule for all public servants, whether they're city, township, county, throughout the entire state. And what that statute says is that full-time employees just cannot contract. Okay, and so Dennis, a lawyer, or Dean Bott could not contract with the county. Part-time employees, and that's someone who works less than 25 hours on average per week, are allowed to contract if they provide proper notice to the board, commission, authority that they work for, and they receive approval, at least in the case of the Board of Commissioners, departments, the Board of Commissioners. Could be the Parks Commission if Parks Commission is allowed to approve contracts as it is in this county. And just to clarify here, there is an opinion from the Attorney General that says county commissioners are part-time employees, not full-time employees, even though I'm sure you feel full-time employees.
We were just chuckling about that one.
What are the disclosure requirements? And I'm going to go through, hopefully real quick, the 4 different types of contracts that the statute deals with. And first of all, where there's a direct benefit to the public servant of less than $250, and I assume what that means is that by direct benefit, that means the profit from the contract, not a contract less than $250. And 5% of the public cost of and the direct benefit to the public servant is less than 5% of the public cost of the contract. Then what's required is prompt disclosure. 7-day notice is not required, and I think there's been some confusion about that, but for these types of contracts, under $250 personal benefit and 5% of public cost, no 7-day notice is required. So On Tuesday, Commissioner Wheelock is asked about performing some service where he's going to benefit for less than $250, go to the board meeting, disclose, and vote on it the same night. Disclosure at a meeting must be made either at a meeting or in writing to the chair. Okay, so you can either go to the board meeting and make the disclosure, or you can disclose in writing to the chairperson of the board commissioner authority that you have this financial interest in a contract. Disclosure must be made part of the official public record, and it requires approval of 2/3 of the public body to approve. You also see in that top part about a sworn affidavit, okay? The requirement for a sworn affidavit replaces the 7-day notice that is required. If there's no sworn affidavit from the public servant stating that the benefit to that public servant is less than $250 or 5% and 5%, then in that case, you would revert to the other disclosure requirements under the Act, which would require a 7-day period before the vote could be taken.
So in the case you're showing a contract less than $250 and the actual public servant receiving less than 5% of that, which is like $12.50.
Well, again, the $250 is the direct benefit to the public servant. I think the only way to interpret that is that's the profit that the public servant would see as a result of the contract. So we're not talking about $250 contracts. Or
what's the 5% then?
The 5% of the public cost of the contract. So you look at the total cost of the contract, let's say it's $5,000. The direct benefit to the public servant must be less than 5% of that $5,000.
Which is the $250. But no work can be completed until the vote is taken.
That's correct, except for emergency services. And this last line, the public servant with the interest in the contract cannot by statute vote. And obviously that's been the current practice, that commissioners abstain when they have an interest in the contract. The second type of contract requiring disclosure, emergency repairs and services. Prompt service is there must be prompt disclosure, and again, 7 days notice is not required. In this case, no affidavit is required for emergency repairs and services. The disclosure must be made again at a meeting or in writing to the chair, made a part of the official record, and again, approval of 2/3 of the public body. There is no dollar limit in the statute regarding emergency repairs and services. So that $250 and 5% does not apply to emergency repairs and services. Public servant, again, is not allowed to vote on a contract. They are not part of the 2/3.
How do you define emergency repairs and services?
I'm trying to remember if there's a definition in the statute, and I'm not sure that there is. If there's not, it'd just be the common meaning of the word emergency. It has to be done now. It can't wait until a public vote can be taken. So, but there may be a better definition in the statute. I don't recall seeing one. Third type of contract, these would be non-emergency repairs or services, direct benefit of $250 or more, or 5% or more of the public cost of the contract. Again, prompt disclosure, disclosure at a meeting or in writing to the chair, disclosure made part of the official record. The notice must be made, and this is an additional requirement to the first two types of contract, it must be part of the public notice of the meeting, the same as if you were posting a public hearing.
The purchasing policy does give a brief definition of emergency, and it just says, when the purchasing director determines that there's an urgent situation. That's all it says.
Bob?
Yeah.
At what point does a person or a business, for example, Lark Lawn and Garden contracts with the county for some stuff, and always gives notice, is he supposed to give notice at the time he bids on the project, or when he has an assumption that he's going to get the bid?
Well, the notice would have to be given, it could be given at any time before the vote if it's less than the $250 or 5%. If it's over that, you have to give at least 7 days' notice before a public vote is taken.
I think the determination is when the service is delivered, whether it be a piece of equipment or the work being done.
Or contract is let.
Yeah, where you're being paid, yeah.
The contract would be at the time that there's a meeting of minds that there's going to be an exchange of goods for money or services.
I don't think that there has to be a notice given when you bid on a project. It's when it's being awarded to you.
But the award is done at this meeting, when we pick...
That's why we always have them give notice at the Ways and Means meeting before the
Okay, I
board takes
see.
final vote 8 days later at the county board.
Okay.
Well, a prime example, Rob, is, for example, when the county was even considering going out for bids for the stairway that's at the south end of the building, I declared up front that, there's a half a dozen contractors in this community that are going to bid this project. I'm probably going to bid the railings to at least 2/3 of them. But I was very forward with that before the specs were even drawn.
But I don't think that's required.
I'm just saying, that's the way I've always tried to do it.
We've tried to err in the more conservative approach to these things, if we can.
So again, with these contracts, more significant dollar amount, there has to be notice in the public notice of the meeting, and there has to be a vote at least 7 days after the notice is given, okay? And that's in addition to the requirements of the first two types of contracts, and of course, the 2/3 and the interested public servant cannot vote. The last type of contract, these are for, again, non-emergency repairs or services where a direct benefit to the public servant is $5,000 or more. And again, it's not contracts over $5,000, it's a direct benefit to the public servant of $5,000 or more. Prompt disclosure must be made orally at the public meeting, not just in writing to the chair. Part of the public record, approval of 2/3 of the public body. Notice is made to the public, again, in the public hearing notice, the notice of the meeting. And again, the vote must be at least 7 days after the notice has been given. And of course, the public servant cannot vote. This is just kind of a summary of those 4 different types of contracts. These are the 4 different types of contracts down the side. And the type of notice that's required, the time of approval, and other requirements. And I have a question whether local rules may be preempted, in fact, by the state law. I talked about the fact that we went back and we revised our policies, the board rules, to make them more consistent with the state law, but we did not necessarily make it entirely consistent with the state law. There are some instances where the purchasing policy in particular is more stringent than what's required by state law, and that's my purpose, and what I'm getting to here is that there are some differences that perhaps you want to consider whether, there should be differences or not. Under this Attorney General's opinion from 1996, it points out that the state statute specifically states that it preempts all other laws that are inconsistent with it. Okay? In other words, it dominates or preempts the entire field of laws regarding public servants and contracts with the public entity with which they work. So there's some argument that could be made anyway, that even a county purchasing policy or code of ethics that somehow gives a public servant less rights than under the state law may not be valid. I'm not willing to go there at this point. There's no published case on that, only an Attorney General's opinion. Okay. When we talk about a party to a contract, we're talking about a person actually being named as a party to a contract. That could be as a business partner or a shareholder. It does not include someone who just has a pecuniary interest, such as a spouse of someone who's an actual party to a contract, but that may be governed by our county code of ethics. Also, the official body with the power to approve a contract, in the case of county officials, they have the power to approve their own contracts, such as the sheriff, as do other or certain commissions, authorities, and boards, such as the Parks Commission. And so the notice, the disclosure requirements, the vote are taken at those specific commissions, authorities, and boards that are responsible for their own budget. This is our purchasing policy. I've tried to put it in a table here for you to outline what is required. In the case of $0 to $500, there is no quote that is required, and an office manager, for example, could approve an expense of up to $500. From $501 to $2,000, 3 verbal quotes are required, and approval is by a department head. From 2001 to 9,999, you need 3 written quotes, and the county administrator makes the approval, and $10,000 or more competitive bid is required, and approval is by the Board of Commissioners ultimately. The reason yeah.
Well, actually, my question, Bob, isn't for you, it's for Dennis. Dennis, do our employees have credit cards where they can go out and purchase items, or is there...
We have more control over that. If you need to make a purchase of an item and you don't, and it's like you're running out of paper or whatever it might be, you have to go through our finance director, get authorization. The finance director holds the credit card, and a credit card can be used in those kinds of situations. But under normal circumstances, if they have time to put in a regular requisition and run it through the regular purchasing policy, that's what's required of them to do.
So what I'm hearing is employees, as a general rule, need to fill out a requisition?
Up at a certain dollar level, yeah. Yeah, they can make small purchases, I think, under $500 with the approval of their department head.
Okay, so it does take approval of...
Yeah, and we still have to cut checks, and it has to go through claims and those kinds of things. Unless it's a situation where they need it right now, and then they can go to Dean and say, here's the situation, let me explain it to you, and if Dean feels there's validity to it, we can put it on a credit card, and then it still goes through the regular finance process of being paid when you pay the credit card.
Okay, well, I'm asking this question basically for an efficiency thing. Have we looked at, allowing employees to have a credit card for a certain dollar amount?
We have looked at it, but we've decided that does
Okay.
not provide good control.
Okay.
But
That's all I
most things that
hear.
we have are bid out. So in other words, all our office supplies, we
All
have
right.
an annual bid and those kinds of things.
Okay.
So
Oh, that's fine.
it's pretty well controlled.
Commissioner Dillon? As far as that goes, we do have some reimbursement situations, though, however, don't we? I mean, seems to me I had a discussion with our health department director, and he said that in some situations they've been able to purchase things and be, maybe I'm misunderstanding, maybe he's going through the process of the purchasing, but outside of the normal channels, you might find a deal or something on some equipment.
That is possible. There are some exceptions where they can run it by me as the purchasing agent, and if it falls within a set of guidelines that we think are reasonable, then we can go ahead and authorize some of that, but that doesn't happen very often. And the other thing, I thought where you were going, sometimes we've had departments that go out and buy things with their own credit cards, and then seek reimbursement from the county. We seriously frown on that as well. We think it should be purchased through regular county channels, because we've even had occasions where, a person's buying everything on their personal credit card and building up points or whatever it might be, and then getting reimbursed from the county, so we frown on that.
Seen that. Let's drag this out.
But after reviewing the county's purchasing policy, it does appear that any employee could spend up to $500 without department head approval, even though the reality is
If they're authorized
no
to
one-
spend within the department. I mean,
Yeah.
Sarah in my office can't just go spend money without the office manager being
Yeah,
aware of
and
it.
that's the way it works in practice.
Yep.
And now we're getting to the real meat and potatoes of it here, so if you could stick with me here. That was the general purchasing policy when you don't have a public employee or officer contracting with the county, okay? It changes when you do have a conflict of interest that arises because you have a public employee or officer contracting with the county. And this is, again, the purchasing policy, not the state statute we're talking about, for amounts from $1 to $4,999. What's required are 3 written quotes, okay? That's different than contracts up to $2,000 under the general policy where oral quotes are allowed. And approval is, of course, by the Board of Commissioners because state statute requires it. For contracts $5,000 or more, a competitive bid is required. That's different than the general purchasing policy because generally we only look at competitive bidding for amounts of $10,000 or more.
Did you say anything more than 5,000 requires a competitive bid?
Under the county's purchasing policy, not under state law.
You've got 10,000 here or more on page 14. On page 14, you
Page
have
14.
10,000 or more for competitive bid.
Yeah, that's for general, and that's if there's no conflict of interest, if we don't have a contract between a public employee and the county, okay? And it's important to understand the difference between these two tables. Okay, this table on page 14, this is the purchasing policy that applies to contracts where there isn't a public servant contracting with the county.
All right.
But when you do have a public servant contracting with the county, then you go to what's laid out here on page 15.
Okay.
This chart. And it's, what I did is I have, these 3 tables, one that shows general contracts for under purchasing policy, one that shows what the purchasing policy is for public servants contracting with the county, and then that chart way back that we discussed under the state statute and what's required. And so if you compare those 3 tables, what you find is that there are some additional rules under our purchasing policy that apply to public servants that are not required by state statute. Okay, and I've tried to outline them here in the next couple of slides. First of all, written quotes are required for purchases of $2,000 or less. That's not required by state statute, but it is required by our purchasing policy. I'm going to skip the second one because it takes a little more explanation than I want to go into, but competitive bids for contracts of $5,000 to $10,000. Okay? In other words, under the state law, or not under state law, but under the policy, the general policy for competitive bidding when you don't have a public servant contracting with the county, we only competitive bid contracts of $10,000 or more, but for public servants, that amount is $5,000. That is not required by state law, but it is our purchasing policy.
What is the difference between a written bid and a competitive bid?
Competitive bids.
Bid is advertised, and written you just call it. Bids
are sealed bids.
Huh?
Competitive bids are sealed bids.
But so 3 written bids are advertised or not advertised?
But written means a written quote.
Right.
Okay, so you didn't just call someone up over the phone and write it down yourself. That's what's required for an oral quote over the phone.
Okay.
Is that you write it down and you document it and you save that paperwork. So if someone asks you, did you check with someone else? You have the documentation that you did, okay? But with a written quote, you actually get a written quote from the business.
And the difference between that and a competitive bid is it's sealed?
Competitive bid is, it's sealed, it's competitive, you do a bid package.
Bids are due at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, you get them all, and then you open them all in a public meeting.
Okay.
A written bid might not include any kind of bid package, although you could have a spec, I suppose.
Yeah, and the theory here is that, you know, I mean, you're trying to prevent any kind of inappropriate activity. You're less concerned at a price of $500 or less. When you start spending thousands of dollars, you want something to be able to document the bids from various places and have it in a file, and so that's why you require written. And then at a certain level, you want it to be competitive to make sure there's no kind of collusion among the bidders and things like that.
Right. And we're getting near the end here, but based on the comments at the last regular board meeting, I put together what could be possible changes to the purchasing policy. These are not recommendations that I'm making. I'm simply trying to point out changes that you could make under state law to the purchasing policy if you felt that it was desirable. First of all, for contracts for emergency repairs or services, and those small contracts where the public servant is going to benefit less than $250 or 5%. We could have an affidavit form so that that is readily available, because again, if you skip the affidavit, you got to wait 7 days to give notice. With the affidavit form, it would probably leave a space to write in what the repair or service is, why, and simply state that this is going to benefit the public servant by less than $250 or 5% of the public cost of the contract. Second, disclosure could be made in writing or orally at the next meeting, which is what we're doing now, but that would still obviously be required. But you could vote at the next meeting, just like you approved some grant applications tonight. There's no reason why a committee of the whole of the Board of Commissioners cannot approve those contracts at the next meeting. And so, again, if you have an emergency repair that's done on Tuesday, it could be approved at the Wednesday board meeting.
What is this within 7 days of BOC? Should that be in there?
The reason I put that in is because it means that the maximum, it would take 7 days to get these types of contracts approved by the Board of Commissioners. Now, that would be different for a contract that final approval is the Parks Commission, because they only meet monthly.
I'm just confused by the statement. If there was a disclosure, we have an emergency, and Commissioner Wheelock can complete the transaction, and we vote to allow him to complete that transaction.
You don't have to vote in advance for an emergency. But you could, let's say it's one of those questionable, doesn't sound like an emergency, but boy, we want it fixed fast. Okay?
Like a broken thing at the Civic Center, you know, the
Yeah.
diving board.
Yeah, let's say that there
Are
wasn't
you
a
still
big
saying
swim
it takes
meet
7
coming
days
up.
disclosure, or are you saying we can just vote on it?
No. All I'm trying to say there is that the maximum time that would take with this change, that you're going to vote at your committee meetings rather than waiting for the final board meeting, is the maximum time it would take to approve that.
I see, because we meet
contract
weekly.
is 7 days.
Okay. All right.
And another possibility, eliminate the 3 written quotes for a requirement for contracts that are less than $2,000. It's not required by state law. It's not required under the general purchasing policy for non-conflict of interest. And, you know, I can understand why it was adopted in the first place. But at the same time, that may be the reason that Danny Brown doesn't want to call a commissioner to do some type of work, because now he's, instead of just calling 3 people up on the phone, now he has to go get written quotes from those contractors or businesses. For this next slide, this is for non-emergency and contracts, and those contracts over $250 or direct interest, 5% of the public cost or more. Written disclosure has to be made to the chair, or oral disclosure to the public body, of course. Vote could be at the next meeting again, so all I'm suggesting there is that you vote at your committee meetings rather than wait till the regular board meeting. And you could also eliminate the competitive bid requirement for contracts of $5,000 or more. Again, that would be another reason that might cause a department head to hesitate in putting someone on their bid list, because it's going to take longer and they have to go through more hoops in order to use that person.
I thought that's not by state law, Bob.
No.
$5,000 number
There
for
really is no
conflict.
state law that governs competitive bidding in counties.
Okay.
It's not required.
I mean, where there's a conflict.
Hard to believe, but yeah.
Where there's a conflict, I meant. Yeah, you're right.
It is
But
hard to
I thought there
believe.
was something that said it for conflicts. I thought you had to bid everything that was 5,000 or more.
That's in our
I thought.
purchasing policy. The
But it's not
purchasing
state law.
policy says not for just any contract, but only contracts where you have a public servant contracting with the county.
Got it, okay.
Okay? So if you eliminated that requirement, it would put public servants in the same category and in full compliance with state law as other contracts where there is no possible conflict of interest. In addition, the specific question was asked, is it allowed to competitively bid services, and we were talking about welding the last time, for example, on a yearly basis or some other period of time. And what I would agree is that a 1 year, I would recommend a 1 year term on a contract of that type. I would recommend, obviously, that you specify the labor and material costs. And I would also recommend that type of contract, because we don't know what we're getting into exactly, we don't know what the final outcome is going to be, how many projects there are going to be, or what the cost of those projects is going to be, that the maximum disclosure requirements be complied with, as well as waiting 7 days to vote on that type of contract. And I do believe that that type of competitive bidding would be permissible.
Question. For emergency repairs, possible amendment, slide number 17, disclosure in writing to chair or orally at next meeting. I'm just giving an assumption that the chairman doesn't have any extraordinary powers. It's just to give notice to the board, and since you're the chairman, that would be the proper process to go through, is to give notice to the chairman, and the chairman would then send out a notice to the remaining board members.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
It doesn't even require that there be a notice sent out to the remaining board
The
members.
statute doesn't say that. I think that's, the idea is that the rest of the board is going to be notified through the chair, but the public servant has done they've met their obligation by providing the notice to the chair.
Okey dokey.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, I guess obviously, this discussion and consumption of your time is probably my fault.
Yes, it is.
Thank you for that disclosure.
I take responsibility for that.
I guess a couple things that I want to say. Obviously, 2 weeks ago, Wednesday night, I wasn't having my greatest day in the world, and If I was out of line, I apologize. I'm not completely sure I was out of line. Historically, I've went back a long time. I've been around a long time. For the first 6-8 years I sat on this board, every year in January, I declared that, I regularly do maintenance work for facilities, emergency services, the sheriff's department, and the board acknowledged that at the beginning of January, and everything was fine. Well, along came 2006, 2007, something like that, and all of a sudden that wasn't good enough. We had to bid, we had to declare every single project, and there was a 7-day waiting period from the time I declared it before the commissioners could take a vote. Well, there's no way that when, they have a wheel bearing go out of a trailer, that they can wait for me to come to my next meeting and give you 7 days notice before they have someone to fix it, and therefore it's become, is it a hardship on my business? No. But has the county received either, maybe not the service they should have received, or have they paid extra money for it? Absolutely, without question. And that's the reason that I made the comments that I made 2 weeks ago. And I can I can give you a list of detailed explanations of services that they've paid for, that they've paid more money than they should have, or didn't get it fixed the way it should have been repaired. But that's my opinion. The people that made the repairs may think they did it just fine. But I guess the discussion comes out, is there a better way to do it? Now, I know, for example, with Commission on Aging, we take an annual bid for maintenance, which Lark Lawn and Garden happens to be the current bidder to do that maintenance equipment. I don't know if there's a provision by which to do that with work that is done for the facilities or with the sheriff's department. Mr. Snyder at one time had said no. You couldn't do that.
I think Bob just said yes.
Bob just said yes, but when we had the discussion a few years ago, the discussion was no, not for that kind of work. We couldn't do that. So, I don't know where we're at. I'm really not sure. I know that this is really confusing when you start talking about when do you have to give 7 days, when do you don't.
Right.
But more importantly, that you need to realize that it's not the 7 days or whether you can give the notice tonight and take the vote. It's the fact that the work can't be completed until that vote's taken. Other than, for example, the incident a couple of weeks ago when Dennis made the determination this was an emergency repair. If I back up to talk about that specific repair, and probably the reason for my frustration that night, a staff member or a welder on staff for facilities had determined they could not repair it. They'd contacted 2 other firms in the community to come and look at it, and they determined they could not repair it. So then I get the phone call. Between the time I got the first phone call and I had the opportunity to get there to look at it, I received 5 phone calls from 2 different people about how soon I was going to be able to get down there and get it fixed. So at this point, I'm a little frustrated around the edges. It's kind of like a discussion I had with a customer earlier today. You've had this thing to every other place in town, and they've all told you can't fix it. Now you not only want me to know if I can fix it, but can I have it for you by Friday? And it does get that way, and I deal with it every day, and obviously, I was in a situation a couple weeks ago where I was a little frustrated with a lot of other things that were going on, but this was only one of them. It wasn't just whether or not I could come and repair the diving board, because that was easy. It truly was. It wasn't brain science. It was easy. It was an easy repair. But the fact is that 3 other people had told him that they couldn't fix it, and then not only do they want me to come and do it, but I get 5 phone calls before I get the opportunity to even get there and look at it.
I guess following up with Commissioner Wheelock's following up with a Parks and Rec situation as an example, of the diving board, where the only one left to repair it and to do it quickly would be a sitting county commissioner, in that example. Is there a way that within a certain dollar amount that the county administrator can approve, or someone can approve, Commissioner, for example, in this case, Commissioner Wheelock, performing that function that day, if he could get to it, and to have it ratified by the board by the next meeting?
Well, actually, that's the way the statute is set up for emergency repairs.
Because he said he had to wait till the next meeting to vote for it to get it repaired.
No.
No.
Well, that situation, we didn't. We declared that an emergency situation.
So,
As long as it's an emergency, you can perform the repair service and wait to do the vote.
okay, all right. So
Really-
if we agree to your amendments as presented in this packet, that will allow that to occur.
It does now.
Well, it does now under current
Here
law.
it does.
It does now.
If you direct us to change the language, or all you have to really do is say, based on his situation, all you have to do is say that, you know, we're authorizing you to go out on bids for welding services for the facilities department on an annual basis, and we're gonna require that they provide us with an hourly labor rate and a percentage over cost on materials.
But let me clarify, because what it would be different is if Danny Brown wants to call someone for emergency services, probably the last person he's going to call is Sonny Wheelock, because he knows he has to get 3 written estimates, okay? And he has an emergency, so he doesn't want to do that. He wants to just call someone up on the phone. So, you know, that's something that's established in our purchasing policy, but is not required by state law.
So that would be the change.
Mr. Gilman?
Could we just have a service contract set up with them for emergency services so we can just take care of that? In other words, add an established rate for emergency services and without...
You gotta bid it.
We would need to bid it.
You have to bid it.
If we
just
bid...
put it out on bid.
If we bid the emergency services then, and then it's a done deal, and then for the rest of the
You don't
year...
even have to bid emergency services, Commissioner. You have to do like the Commission on Aging did. You put out a bid that says, we're looking for someone to provide maintenance services on our lawnmowers, okay? And they're required to put in a bid of what their hourly rate is gonna be and what their cost over wholesale on parts are. And that's what we did, and then we awarded a bid based on that for a 1-year period.
And we have done that with Lark Lawn and Garden for
We could do the
repair of
same
snow
thing with
blowers and
facilities, saying for welding projects, you know, or, you know, we'd have to get the terminology right.
Commissioner Henschel?
Thank you. I think our policy, as you shared with us, overstates what the state requires. We go a little bit more strict, and perhaps to the detriment of our county in some cases. I would move that we amend the county purchasing policy to reflect the possible amendments to purchasing policy in this presentation on pages 17 and 18.
Second.
Bob, I'm going to ask,
I
just
thought
because I'm
emergency
directly
for-
affected by
you
this
can't.
change, I better abstain from voting.
No, you shouldn't.
17, 18.
Nothing to do with you.
Yeah, this is generic.
Well, I mean, if you have to abstain from voting, I'm guessing Commissioner Henschel does, Commissioner Gilman does.
And Commissioner
Flake
Flake.
I'm just asking the
And
question.
you won't have
I think-
2/3 vote.
I can't, do you think so, Bob? I mean,
Well, you only need a majority vote to approve a different purchasing policy.
But the administrator's point is that we all have businesses that could potentially...
Yeah,
Except some of us that are retired.
The test is whether you believe that you have a pecuniary interest such that it would affect your judgment in deciding whether to pass this or not. In other words, might you feel that you can't fulfill your obligation to the public to do what's best for them?
I'm fine with voting.
Yeah.
You, me, and him, then we'd have 5 votes.
Ain't none of us gonna get rich.
If I could, I just have one question. I know it's getting late.
Go ahead,
Commissioner,
Dennis.
my only question was, you omitted page 19. Was that intentional, or, I think that's the one that really addresses this issue?
19 was very specific to the issue of welding, was it not?
No, it's specific to the
It
idea
has
of
to do with
having
the annual contract.
competitive bids for service work, where there
Could be
might be a
electrical,
conflict.
could be plumbing, it could be.
All of the above.
Oh, I was under the impression we could already do that. Okay.
But the main difference would be on slide 18, to eliminate the competitive bid requirement for contracts of $5,000 or more as applied to public servants, but not other contracts.
Right.
I personally, I think, we're just looking at this for the first time tonight, and I think it needs to come under the framework of a discussion of rule changes in general, but to get something that's 20 pages long and then suddenly act on it, I think is,
I think you're right, Commissioner.
I don't see a crushing time need to resolve this in the next, 2
Other than
hours.
this would be a preliminary recommendation going to the board.
Well,
You got time.
what I would, if I may make a suggestion, I think we could bring this back to RMA next month, and in the meantime, if you're okay with this, I could put some proposed language together that would amend the purchasing policy that I could have in your packet for next month that would address these 3 pages, and then you could decide whether that's something you want to consider or not.
We could form another committee and just do it next year.
You already have a purchasing committee. You could refer this to the purchasing committee and have them look at it.
I'm sorry,
We haven't reported out.
we vote on everything twice already. Just put it into words, we'll get it in our packet for the board meeting. If we don't like it, we'll vote it down or bring it up again. That's just where I'm at.
I just do know.
Okay.
Did you withdraw your motion?
No, he's
No,
not
sir.
withdrawing his motion. Fisher, please.
Commissions have to be careful. I experienced something the other day in my business on a bid with a city south of us, where I presently have a service contract almost identical to the Commission on Aging. So when I came in $351 higher than the low bid, this particular public body, even though I've given them what I feel is really a good deal, I do all their service work, I've sold them several pieces of equipment, they chose for $351 to make a purchase of taxpayer dollars in that entity, which I am a property owner and pay large taxes. They went for $351 less. They went to Lapeer.
Lapeer?
Lapeer. Obviously, with no thought of, number one, who's going to service the product. It's not a product that I sell. So consequently, I'm seeing red. And when that product comes to my door, I'll say,
Double.
the contract doesn't apply, I'll fix it, but it's at full rate. And the only reason I even mention that is, and I am going to make an appearance at their next meeting and explain to them exactly what they've done. It's water over the dam. But public bodies need to think about the deal they've got in hand and the one that's in the bush. And Sonny, I think, would know exactly what I'm talking about. Like the instance he uses, 2 other services in this town, including one in-house, had said it's not repairable. Yet he goes right over and repairs it, saving a lot of money. So I think you got to be careful on the decisions you make.
Who made the motion?
Henschel.
Commissioner Henschel.
Does the motion make, if I can ask, if the motion maker is accepting page 19 as well?
I'd be willing to do that.
Okay, so who seconded it?
You.
Okay, I would agree with it. I would agree with
I
that.
thought we were going to refer it to the next month's.
Oh, we haven't had the withdrawn.
No, we have a motion on the floor. It has not been withdrawn by the motion maker, so.
No, I feel, Larry, that we've got time between now and the meeting to review whatever wording our administration comes up with. We can edit that wording at the end of the month meeting. Government takes so long to do things. I know sometimes you don't want to, jump too fast and put your butt in the creek, but, what we're doing here is bringing our policy in line with state law. I think there's a level of security that, we're just aligning with state law. We're not making up something new. So I say let's do it.
We ready to vote? Okay, by roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Maxbauer?
No.
Thomas?
No.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes.
Gilman?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Lemko?
Yes.
Richardson?
No. Okay, motion passes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob, for your work. The next item, Commissioners, last month I came to you and asked you to allow us to spend up to $10,000 to do the industrial commercial studies that have to be done at the end of this year by our equalization department. It appears now, as we indicated to you earlier, that the individual who was our chief deputy, who was out with illness, is now back part-time 3 days a week. So we're thinking he's going to be able to do a good portion of those commercial industrial studies, which should save that money. But we want to get your authorization. That's what he does. We want to get your authorization to spend up to $3,000 to do the residential study portion of the equalization reports if we need to. It'll come out of the existing budget. We don't think it'll go over the $10,000 total, but we wanted to get your permission to go ahead and do the residential if we can do the commercial industrial
Motion to approve.
in-house.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And as we come to the end of your interviews and appointments, we need to form 3 ad hoc committees for the boards on the last page of your packet.
I would
start
volunteer
with-
for
Okay,
ad hoc one.
well, if I can
Okay.
continue.
Right.
Ad hoc number 1, by the way these are arranged is the top board in each of the 3 groupings was considered the one most likely to have multiple candidates and/or multiple vacancies.
Okay.
And in as you go down the list, in many cases, there's only one applicant who is the incumbent position, person in that position and so forth. So it's sort of the first board that's controlling that. And on ad hoc number 1, Commissioner Inman, I know you're on the Airport Commission. I know you wanted to be a part of that. And Commissioner Maxbauer, I assume that you would want to be on this board as part of the Commission on Aging.
Yeah.
So I need 2 more volunteers. Commissioner Fleece, 1 more volunteer. Commissioner Henschel. Okay. For ad hoc number 2, Commissioner Maxbauer, again, and I would like to be on this one. Commissioner Wheelock,
Well,
and...
primarily due to the fact that we're restructuring resource recovery, and we're cutting that from 9 members
Okay.
down.
Commissioner Inman, did you want to be on this one as well?
I can, but just so you know, I also serve on the Farmland Preservation Board, so.
Who's on our Board of Public Works?
Commissioner Thomas?
Thomas.
Look at him, cheer up.
Another trip into the county.
What does ad hoc got to do with the word volunteer?
Just following the logic.
Commissioner Thomas, do you want to be on that?
I suppose, I was looking at it because of the appeals board too.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
So we have 4, and then on ad hoc number 3, Commissioner Gilman, you're the library representative, so we'll start with you. And I need 3 more.
I have Farmland Preservation. so-
Lemko and Inman because of farmland preservation, and Henschel. Who did I miss? Did I miss anybody?
And I
guess
and I
everybody
have the
put something.
COG, so I got 2 of those.
Sorry, Chris, you don't get to be on all 3.
I don't mind.
I know you don't mind.
I'm just
but
volunteering. I mean,
I know, that's good, you're a good volunteer. Okay, I guess I need, so what I have is, excuse me, on ad hoc number 1, I have Inman, Maxbauer, Fleece, and Henschel. And ad hoc number 2, I have Maxbauer, Richardson, Wheelock, and Thomas. And on ad hoc number 3, I have Gilman, Lemko, Inman, and Henschel. I have a motion to that effect.
So move.
Support.
Support by Lemkool. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Could you go over ad hoc 2 and 3 again, please?
Sure.
Just the names.
Yeah, number 2 is Max Bauer, Richardson, Wheelock, and Thomas. And number 3 is Gilman, Lemkool, Inman, and Henschel.
Thank you.
You only got one.
And now I hope we have a very brief administrator's update.
Yes.
Nothing happened
Yeah.
last week. See you.
He was gone.
Now we just assigned him a bunch of stuff.
Yep. Just so you know, the testing is underway to replace our administrative assistant. That'll be done by Monday or Tuesday, and we'll begin interviewing. FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, had the public hearing on redoing the maps. We're working with our federal legislators to try to get that slowed down, and our flood maps, our floodplain maps. And the reason is because we went to them and said, listen, why would you go do the floodplain maps? We're taking out the 3 dams. And their answer was, well, if you do that, you're going to have to do it over at your cost. And we said, well, doesn't it make sense to wait a couple years and do it when they're out? No, this is our plan. So we're working out with our federal legislators to try to get them to slow that down and see if we can't get them to delay redoing the maps. I did get your information on the mental health jail issue and on the collections issue, and I've just started to look at it now, working with Depot, but I am working on those things. Just a reminder, next Wednesday is the budget meeting where we get the final budget for your final decisions to recommend to the board the following week. And the last thing is, the bids for the health building are going to be open tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the Civic Center, if you're interested in attending. 3 o'clock at the Civic Center. And we're hopeful they come in really low. I won't be there for the first part of the meeting because I've got a meeting here on the 911 dispatch equipment request. But I'll get over there as soon as I can. But feel free to attend if you want to be at that meeting. 3 o'clock at the Civic Center tomorrow. That's all.
Commissioner Fleece, did you have a comment?
I'd like to thank Bob for the work he did on that purchasing policy. The chart he laid out there tonight and gave each one of us, even a simpleton like myself can understand it fairly clearly, so thank you, Bob.
I noticed that everybody down on this end of the room understood him.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
That's it?
Are we on
Any other
committee
public
report?
comment?
I don't know, I'm
Where are
sort of
we?
stunned here, okay. Unfinished business, none. New business, none. Second public comment, what will be public? Commissioner committee reports? Oh, okay, Commissioner Henschel?
Briefly, maybe you can clear this up for me. Yesterday at 10 a.m., we had the accounts, what do you call it? Accounts and claims. Yes. And one of the things we approved was restitution checks is one of the things we approved. I noticed there was one to the business where I worked for about $3.14.
It was exactly $3.14.
And I know that because when I got back, and just in passing said that to my secretary, that, oh, we've got a big one coming in for $3.14, she says, I already got it. I got it last week. And it was written on the 5th. Yesterday was the 10th, 11th. So I'm just wondering, why are we approving something that's already been sent out? Are we getting the cart before the horse, or do restitution checks not matter?
I'll have to check that and get you a firm answer next week at Ways and Means after I talk with Dean. I can tell you there are certain things, such as utility payments and things like that, that we pay immediately to avoid finance charges. I don't know if when the court orders a restitution check when it comes in, whether that's just automatically paid because it's court ordered and doesn't really fall under, you don't have any say really in a restitution check that's ordered by the court. But I'll have to get a firm answer from Dean, and I'll have that for you next week.
Thank you.
I found out you have to pay out there real quick or else they raise the price.
Okay, Commissioner Lemkool.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting last night that Garfield Township approved to reduce the property taxes for the people in Garfield Township from $2,000 2.67 mils to 2.3372 mils because they paid off the building bonds.
I have to tell you, Garfield continues
To
to
reduce.
lower the taxes
Yep.
for the township residents, continually. Yeehaw!
They probably have one of the largest fund balances of any governmental unit in Grand Traverse County.
Well, I got to tell you, the board is managing their money wisely.
Very well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you gotta remember, they got extra voted in there too.
So,
Their emergency services,
That's true.
they have extra voted millage.
yeah.
There are townships that don't have any extra voted millage, and there's only a couple of them now,
Yep.
Commissioner Flees?
and they've got a 5 mil limit too.
I just wanted to make sure everybody saw the paper, or heard the news that Mayfield injection well has been delayed for 6 months at the request of the requester. So it's kind of good news, but I'm not sure why they requested that, but still it buys the township out there more time.
Forget about them.
Okay.
Baker, in the works.
Anybody else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yes.
Still 3-3. Like that.